The sea was calm that morning when Rachel and her daughter Emily set off for their long-awaited fishing trip. It was the first weekend of spring break, and Rachel, a single mother, had promised Emily they would spend the day together on the water. Emily, only 9 years old, had been looking forward to it for weeks. She had even packed her small tackle box the night before, organizing her colorful lures with care. Rachel worked long hours as a nurse, and moments like these, where she and Emily could be alone with nature, were rare and precious. They boarded a small rented boat just after sunrise with their rods, a cooler packed with sandwiches and plenty of water. Rachel took a picture of them smiling, sun in their faces, and sent it to her sister, writing, "Fishing day with my girl. Wish us luck." That was the last message anyone received from her. When the boat didn't return by evening, the marina staff alerted the Coast Guard. Rachel and Emily had signed a rental book, so the staff knew who they were and what time they had left. Hours passed, then days. A wide search was launched, covering hundreds of square miles of ocean. Planes, boats, and even divers were involved, but no trace of the mother or daughter was found. The boat, too, had vanished. The story made local news and quickly spread across the country. People were heartbroken by the smiling photo of Rachel and Emily, their happy faces now frozen in time. Experts believe they had likely been caught in a strong current or capsized far out at sea. After weeks of searching, the authorities called off the rescue operation. A memorial was held in their hometown, and a small bench with their names carved into it was placed near the marina where they had last been seen. The ocean had taken them, it seemed, and there were no answers left to find. 8 long months passed. The town returned to its quiet routine, though some people still spoke of Rachel and Emily, especially those who had known them well. One such person was Dale, an old fisherman who had lived by the coast his entire life. He remembered seeing them that day, Rachel waving cheerfully as she and her daughter motored out toward the open sea. Something about the memory stuck with him. Dale was the kind of man who trusted the ocean but never underestimated it. He had seen storms come from nowhere, had lost friends to waves, and knew that sometimes the sea kept secrets. On a cloudy morning in early December, Dale took his boat out farther than usual, heading toward cluster rocks where fish liked to gather. The day was quiet, and the water unusually still. That's when he saw it. There, rising from the ocean like a forgotten tower, was an old lighthouse he hadn't seen in years. It wasn't marked on any modern maps, and most people assumed it had been abandoned decades ago. But something caught Dale's eye. A small white boat was tied loosely to the side, bobbing gently against the stone wall. Curious, he brought his own boat closer. As he neared, he saw something else that made his heart skip, a red jacket, just like the one Emily had been wearing in the photo that had been shown on the news, was visible near the base of the lighthouse. Dale stood still, engine off, letting the waves rock him. He pulled out his binoculars and looked again. The jacket was real, and so was a small figure next to it, sitting motionless on the stone ledge. Dale didn't wait another moment. He grabbed his radio and called the Coast Guard. Something was not right. Someone had been to that lighthouse recently, or was still inside. Dale's heart pounded in his chest as he tied his boat to the old rusted ring at the base of the lighthouse. The waves lapped quietly against the stone, and the only sound was the wind whispering across the open sea. He stepped carefully onto the ledge, eyes scanning the weathered building. The figure in the red jacket had disappeared. For a moment, he thought maybe he'd imagined it, but the small white boat tied nearby confirmed that someone had been here. It wasn't an old boat either. It was modern, clean, and had no signs of damage. Dale touched the side of it. Inside were a few supplies, cans of food, a life jacket, and what looked like a child's backpack. His stomach turned. This wasn't a random visit by someone exploring. Whoever had been here was staying for a while. Slowly, he stepped up to the thick black door of the lighthouse. It was cracked open just slightly. He pushed it gently and it creaked as it moved inward. The air inside was damp and cool. The round walls rose high above, the stone rough and worn by years of storms. A spiral staircase curved along the wall, leading to the top, but Dale didn't move yet. He listened. Nothing. Then, suddenly, a sound, a light scuffle, like footsteps on metal. His breath caught. "Hello," he called softly. Anyone there? No answer. I'm not here to hurt you, he added. I just saw the boat and wanted to check. There was silence for a few seconds. Then, from above, a small voice replied, Don't come up. It was a child's voice, high and scared. Dale froze. It's okay, he said calmly. I saw your red jacket. Are you hurt? There was another pause, and then the voice came again, a little stronger this time. Are you with a bad man? Dale felt a chill run through him. No, I'm just a fisherman. My name is Dale. I don't know any bad man. The voice was quiet now, whispering something too soft to hear. Then he heard light footsteps coming slowly down the stairs. A few moments later, the child appeared in the dim light. It was a girl. She had long brown hair and braids. And though her face was thinner and paler than in the photo, Dale recognized her immediately. It was Emily. She looked at him with wide eyes, then stepped closer. You're not with him? She asked again. Dale shook his head slowly. No, sweetheart. I'm not. I thought you were gone. Her eyes filled with tears. He took us here. Me and Mommy. He said nobody would find us. But Mommy got sick, and he wouldn't help her. Dale bent down, his voice gentle. Where's your mom now? Emily looked down at the floor, then pointed toward a small door at the back of the room. She's sleeping. She hasn't woken up in a long time. Dale's chest ached. He walked to the door and opened it slowly. Inside was a small storage room with a few old supplies, and on the floor, wrapped in a jacket, was Rachel. She was still and cold. Dale closed the door quietly and turned back to Emily. You've been here all this time? She nodded. He brought food sometimes, but then he stopped coming. I think he forgot about me. Dale couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had found Emily alive after 8 months. And somehow, no one had known she was here. He knew he had to get her out. Come on, he said gently, holding out his hand. We're going home. Emily hesitated. What if he comes back? Dale looked her in the eyes. He won't. Not if I can help it. She took his hand, and together they walked back out into the light. Dale helped her into his boat and wrapped her in a blanket. As they pulled away from the lighthouse, Emily looked back at it one last time. I used to watch the water every day, she said softly, hoping someone would come. Dale gave her a reassuring smile. Well, someone finally did. By the time Dale reached the marina with Emily, the sky had turned a soft orange, the sun dipping low behind the clouds. The dock was quiet, but as soon as he helped Emily onto the wooden planks, people nearby turned their heads. A woman gasped. Dale waved one of the dock hands over and told him to call the police and an ambulance immediately. This is Emily, he said plainly. The girl from the news. She's alive. Within minutes, emergency vehicles were racing to the scene. Paramedics gently took Emily, wrapped in a thermal blanket, and checked her vitals. She was weak and undernourished, but alert. A detective named Officer Breyer arrived shortly after and asked Dale to recount everything. Dale told him everything. Finding the lighthouse, the small boat, and the terrifying words Emily had spoken about the bad man. Emily, still shaken but brave, confirmed it all. Her voice was steady as she told him that a man had taken her and her mother from their fishing boat, told them to be quiet, and brought them to the lighthouse where he said no one would find them. She remembered he had a gun. He said he'd come back with food, but after a few months, he stopped coming. Her mother had tried to keep her spirits up, singing songs and telling stories. But one day she became very sick and couldn't stand. Emily cried softly as she said her mother eventually went to sleep and never woke up. The whole room was quiet. Reporters flooded the marina soon after the news broke. Emily's survival became a national story overnight. Photos of her and Rachel from that sunny fishing day were shown again, but now alongside pictures of thinner, older-looking Emily, clinging to Dale's hand. Dale was hailed as a hero, though he kept telling everyone he just followed his gut. He never trusted the sea to hide the truth forever. A full investigation was opened immediately. Police sent a team to the lighthouse the next day. They found Rachel's body, just as Emily had described, and confirmed she had died of untreated illness and starvation. But there was more. Hidden beneath a trapdoor in the lighthouse floor was a narrow storage area. Inside were various supplies, and even a cot with chains attached to it. It was clear that someone had been living there or keeping others hidden. Most chilling of all was a notebook. The pages were filled with strange drawings, maps of the coast, and entries that mentioned watching them and taking them far from others. The writing was erratic and obsessive. The authorities now believed that Rachel and Emily had been deliberately targeted, possibly stalked before their trip. Detectives combed through Rachel's social media and found that a man named Curtis Lane had been liking her posts for over a year. He had once worked at the marina, but had been fired for strange behavior. When they pulled up his records, they found he had a history of mental illness and previous arrests for trespassing and harassment. Curtis had vanished shortly after Rachel and Emily disappeared. Now he was the main suspect. A manhunt was launched. Photos of Curtis were shared nationwide. Emily, while staying in a recovery center with kind nurses and therapists, helped police identify him from a photo lineup. "That's him," she said, her voice small but certain. In the weeks that followed, people from all over sent letters and gifts to Emily. Schools held fundraisers. Dale visited her often, and though he was never much of a talker, he'd sit by her side while she drew or read. Emily smiled more now. She was finally safe, but she still had nightmares. She would wake up sometimes crying, saying she could hear the waves and the sound of the trapdoor creaking open. The therapist said that healing would take time, and that was okay. She was a strong little girl, stronger than most adults, and she had survived something no child ever should have faced. As winter turned to spring, Dale took Emily back to the water's edge, this time just to watch the waves. "Do you think Mommy knows I'm okay?" she asked. Dale nodded. "I know she does." Emily looked out over the sea, the sun warm on her face. For the first time in a long while, she felt the light touch her heart. Spring turned to summer, and Emily's world slowly began to rebuild itself. She moved in with her aunt, Rachel's sister, who lived in a quiet town not far from the coast. The house was warm and filled with love, and her aunt did everything she could to make Emily feel at home. There were new clothes, stuffed animals, and fresh paint in her bedroom. But what mattered most to Emily was the way her aunt listened. She didn't rush her or ask too many questions. She let Emily talk when she was ready. At school, teachers treated her with kindness, and students, having heard her story, were careful around her. Some tried to befriend her gently, offering crayons or snacks at lunch. Emily began to feel like maybe she could belong again. Still, she carried deep wounds that couldn't be seen. She sometimes awoke in the middle of the night and had to check that the door was locked. She was scared of dark places and sudden noises. But over time, those fears began to soften, thanks to the support of those around her. The police had still not found Curtis Lane, despite searching nearby coastal towns, interviewing former co-workers, and even bringing in tips from citizens. He had vanished without a trace. It was like he had fallen off the face of the earth. Some believed he had drowned, possibly during one of his trips to the lighthouse. Others feared he might return someday. But Emily was kept safe, with security in place and people always watching out for her. Dale stayed a steady presence in her life. He often took her out on gentle boat rides, not far out, just near the shore, where they would fish quietly or look for shells. He never asked her to go near the lighthouse again. She didn't want to, and he understood without needing to say a word. One day, about 2 months after her rescue, Dale and Emily returned to the lighthouse with a police escort. Emily had asked to go back just once, to say goodbye to her mother properly. The authorities had cleared the space, and Rachel's body had been given a proper burial. Emily stood at the stone platform with a bouquet of wildflowers in her hand. She didn't speak. She just placed the flowers on a ledge and looked out at the sea. Dale stood behind her, giving her space. After a few minutes, she turned to him and said, "I think Mommy stayed strong for me, until she knew I'd be okay." Dale nodded, tears stinging his eyes. She was the bravest woman I ever heard of. Emily smiled weakly and took his hand. Together, they got back on the boat and left the lighthouse behind them forever. Months passed, and though the pain never fully went away, Emily found small joys again. She joined a new art club, drew pictures of the sea with soft colors instead of dark shadows, and even wrote a short story about a little girl who got lost but found her way home. Her aunt sent it to a local newspaper, and soon Emily's words were published for all to read. People from across the country sent her messages of hope, saying her courage gave them strength. A local museum added a small display about the rescue, showing Dale's old fishing hat, Emily's red jacket, and a note that read, "Survivor of the Sea." Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. Dale got a call from the Coast Guard. A man matching Curtis Lane's description had been spotted near a remote coastal cave, living in hiding. He had been caught stealing food from a campsite. Police moved in quickly, and within hours, Curtis was in custody. Emily was told gently by her aunt. She didn't say much, only asked if she was safe now. When her aunt nodded, Emily finally exhaled a long breath. The nightmares began to fade after that. Curtis would stand trial, and Emily wouldn't have to testify unless she chose to. The justice system would handle the rest. Years later, Emily would grow into a strong young woman. She would tell her story at schools, encouraging children to speak up, to be brave, and to trust their instincts. She would say that even in the darkest places, there's always a chance for light. And every year, on the day she was rescued, she and Dale would go back to the shore, cast a line into water, and remember the woman who had kept hope alive in the heart of a little girl, even when no one else knew she was out there waiting to be found.